There's a moment that changes everything. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet. The moment when someone who's been invisible their entire life finally stops trying to be seen. Not because they gave up, but because they woke up. You know this moment. If you've lived it. The day you stopped explaining yourself. The day you stopped performing. The day you realized, I don't actually care what they think anymore. And that realization didn't feel like relief. It felt like death. The death of the person you spent your whole life trying to be. There's something profoundly different about people who've crossed this threshold. Not bitter, not angry, not even sad. Just done. Done pretending. Done shrinking. Done sacrificing their truth for other people's comfort. And the world doesn't know what to do with them. Because invisible people aren't supposed to stop caring. They're supposed to keep trying, keep hoping, keep waiting to finally be chosen. But something shifts when you realize you were never actually invisible. You were just surrounded by people who refused to see you. And that's not the same thing. Let me take you back. To the beginning. To the first time you learned that your presence didn't matter. Maybe it was childhood. A parent who looked through you instead of at you. A sibling who got all the attention while you faded into the background. A classroom where the teacher never called your name, or maybe it was later. A relationship where you poured everything into someone and they still forgot your birthday. Job where you worked twice as hard as everyone else and got half the recognition. A friendship where you were always the one reaching out and they only remembered you when they needed something. However it started, you learned the same lesson. Your value is conditional. You only matter when you're useful. You only exist when you're performing. You're only worth remembering when you make yourself impossible to ignore. So you did what invisible people do. You became useful. You became the reliable one, the understanding one, the one who never complained, the one who was always there. You learned to anticipate needs before they were spoken. You learned to fix problems you didn't create. You learned to carry emotional weight that wasn't yours. And you told yourself it was love, that this is what good people do. But here's what you didn't realize. You weren't being good. You were being invisible. Because truly being seen isn't about being useful. It's about being valued for who you are. When you're not doing anything at all. And you've never experienced that. Not really. So you kept trying, kept performing, kept proving, kept hoping that one day, if you just did enough, if you just gave enough, if you just sacrificed enough, someone would finally see you. But they never did. Not because you weren't enough, but because people who need you to be invisible will never choose to see you. They benefit too much from your silence, your accommodation, your flexibility, your willingness to shrink. You made their lives easier by being small, and they got so comfortable with that version of you that they never bothered to ask, who are you when you're not being useful? Carl Jung understood this. He called it living from the persona instead of the self. The persona is the mask, the role you play to be accepted. The self is who you actually are beneath it. And here's the tragedy. Most people who've been invisible their whole lives don't even know who their self is anymore, because they've spent so long becoming what others needed that they forgot to become themselves. You don't have opinions of your own because you learned your opinions don't matter. You don't have boundaries because boundaries make people uncomfortable. You don't have needs because your needs were always an inconvenience. So you erased them. All of them, until you became a perfect reflection of what everyone else wanted you to be. Formless, adaptable, invisible. And for a while, that worked. You were loved. Or at least you thought you were. But here's the truth you're starting to realize. They didn't love you. They loved what you did for them. And the moment you stopped doing it, the moment you stopped performing, the moment you stopped being useful, you'll see how quickly that love disappears. This is the realization that breaks people. The moment you understand, everything you sacrificed yourself for was conditional. Every relationship you bent yourself into a pretzel for was built on your absence, not your presence. Every person who claimed to care about you only cared about the version of you that served them. And when you finally show up as yourself, raw, unfiltered, with needs and boundaries and opinions, they don't recognize you. Worse, they reject you, not because you changed, but because you stopped disappearing. And they can't handle that. So, here's where the shift happens. The moment when the invisible stop caring. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds. Slowly. Like pressure accumulating behind a dam. One more time you're taken for granted. One more time your effort goes unnoticed. One more time you give everything and receive nothing until something inside you just breaks. Not violently. Quietly. Like a string that's been pulled too tight for too long finally snapping. And in that moment, you don't feel anger. You feel clarity. Crystal clear, undeniable clarity. I don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to explain yourself to people who weaponize your honesty. You don't have to prove your worth to people who've already decided you're disposable. You don't have to keep lighting yourself on fire to keep people warm who would never do the same for you. You don't have to care. And that realization? It's the most terrifying freedom you've ever felt. Because for the first time in your life, you're not living for their approval. You're not performing for their acceptance. You're not shrinking for their comfort. You're just existing. As yourself. Unapologetic ally. And the world doesn't know what to do with that. People who benefited from your invisibility will panic. They single quotes LL accuse you of changing, of being selfish, of not being yourself anymore. And they're right. You're not the version of yourself they created. You're the version you were always supposed to be, before they taught you that being small was safer than being seen. Here's what happens when the invisible stop caring. You stop answering texts immediately, not out of spite, but because you don't owe anyone instant access to you. You stop saying yes to things you don't want to do, not because you're rude, but because your time has value. You stop explaining your decisions, not because you're secretive, but because people who truly respect you don't need a thesis defense for every boundary. You stop performing emotional labor for people who never once asked how you were doing. You stop accommodating people who never once accommodated you. You stop being small to make other people comfortable. And here's what's wild. The people who truly love you won't even notice, because they were never asking you to be invisible in the first place. But the people who needed you small, they'll lose their minds. They'll call you cold. They'll call you distant. They'll say you've changed. And you'll realize they're mourning the loss of their convenience, not the loss of you, because they never actually had you to begin with. They had a performance, a role, a service. And now that the service has ended, they don't know what to do. But here's the beautiful, terrible truth. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be useful. You are not here to disappear so other people can feel comfortable. You are here to exist. Fully. Loudly. Unapologetic ally. And if that makes people uncomfortable, that tells you everything you need to know about why they wanted you invisible in the first place. The hero's journey isn't always about fighting external enemies. Sometimes it's about fighting the internalized belief that you don't deserve to take up space. Sometimes the dragon you have to slay is the voice in your head that whispers, if you're too much, they'll leave. And the answer is, let them. Because anyone who leaves when you stop shrinking was only ever there for your absence, not your presence. When the invisible stop caring, they don't become villains. They become whole. They reclaim the parts of themselves they buried to be loved. They remember what it feels like to exist without permission. They stop asking, am I enough? And start knowing, I was always enough. They just needed me to believe I wasn't. So if you're reading this and you've reached that moment, the moment where you realize you don't care anymore, you're not broken, you're not cold, you're not losing yourself, you're finding yourself for the first time after a lifetime of being told your existence was negotiable. And the world will adjust or it won't. But that's no longer your concern, because the invisible don't stop caring to hurt others. They stop caring to save themselves. And that's not selfish. That's survival. There's a version of you that's been waiting in the shadows your whole life, not the useful version, not the convenient version, not the small version, the real version, the one who takes up space, the one who has needs, the one who says no. And when you finally let that